Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nedling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Nedling, here from Roswell, Georgia, and I am very pleased to have a guest today that will hopefully fulfill the goal of our podcast, which is to share topics and guests that will empower you to grow as a confident leader and take your business or your life to the next level. Today, my guest is Mark Ashby, and let me tell you a little bit about Mark. He is a highly regarded specialist to assist multinational companies and their leaders in crisis awareness, cultural change, and high-performance leadership. He has displayed an extraordinary ability to perform optimally under stressful scenarios through extensive experience as a member of the elite paratroopers and other specialist roles in the Australian Army, with operational tours in East Timor. Mark was deployed to Middle East as a team leader in the highly dangerous private security sector for 11 years in Iraq, before returning to Australia to work as a senior risk consultant in the corporate world for 6 years. Since returning to the corporate sector and setting up his own consulting firm in Australia, he has been using his experience to assist senior members of multinational companies in high performance leadership, crisis awareness, and cultural change, so that they can become more resilient and adaptable. And I'll bet you in 6 years, 6 years ago, you had no idea how important what you do would be to our companies today.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks for having me, Vicki. It's wonderful to talk with you. And it's certainly been a bit of a journey.
Yeah,
I don't really come from that cookie cutter, I suppose, that real, I suppose you want to call it normal corporate setting,
Yeah.
but with my background. But it's just sort of how it's sort of morphed and where I sort of found myself and heading in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. So we always start out with a simple question, but I want to let everybody know that the episode's theme is going to be every nanosecond counts in business, and here's why. So again, let's start with that easy question. We kind of gave it away, but where in Australia do you call home?
Yeah, home for me is Sydney. That's where I've been
Nice.
my whole life, except when I've been away. My second home was in the Middle East for a bit over a decade. But yeah, Sydney's my home. Grew up at the beach here, and that's where I've been my whole life.
I had interviewed someone from Sydney, Sydney area just recently, and they said it's very hot this last couple of weeks. So
yeah,
sure.
it's starting to warm up now. That's right. We're coming out of our winter, which to some people they may laugh at our winter, but we get quite a lot of wind here, of course. So it makes it a lot colder. But yeah, it's starting to warm up now. You can really feel the spring coming in for us.
She had said she could put away her scarves. and being from the north here originally, I know exactly what she's talking about. Even here in Atlanta, the winters, after you move away from the north and you come down here, I swear you get colder faster, easier. So. Or maybe it's just the old age makes you colder.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think as you're getting older, that's how I feel the same. You feel it more. Just slow down.
Yeah, that's for sure. So let's get into the meat of this. What did your experiences as a team leader in that highly dangerous private sector teach you about leadership?
I think it taught me that you've got to be present in that role every day. For us, you had you had people under you, but for us, it wasn't just people. You had, we called them our souls, because you've literally got, at any one time roughly about 9 or 10 souls under your watch, and your big job is to get those early days, to get all those guys back home.
Right.
That's your responsibility, because you may know their families, may know their children, and it's a huge responsibility. So to me, that leadership aspect was, of course, the objective to get our missions completed, to keep our clients happy and safe as well, but to get everybody home. And it's, I suppose, forefront there, where you've got to really be front and center. You've got to lead from the front and lead by example, and you're also being watched and monitored yourself, to be as professional and as sort of studious in that role as you can. And you don't have the luxury, like I suppose in the corporate world, where if you make a mistake, I've been able to reset and just think, okay, tomorrow we'll get the team together, and how do we improve that so we don't have to make that mistake ever again. In our world, if you made a critical error, maybe somebody could lose their life over it. And then you've got to live. You have to live with that as well. So it's a high pressure setting, of course. But yeah, it's unbelievable.
Puts a whole new definition to accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, if you make that mistake yourself, you've got to live with that. And all of us guys, we're our own worst critics. So, we're very harsh on ourselves to make those mistakes. So it's just through repetition and just trying to be on that job every day that you go in there, to really understand your own capabilities and to understand what your people's capabilities are around you as well is a very big one. Really knowing who they are, so you can really have that trust and faith in them.
Yeah. So you started talking about this, but share a bit about what it's like to be that close protection team leader. I mean, it can't be a normal day.
Yeah, you've got to, like I said, like when you're organising your missions, you're generally doing things the night before. So it's not like we go to work the next morning and go, right, what are we doing today, and how do we go about our day? Your missions the day after are already organised. Whether it's through actual like an orders process for us, we have like a meeting. We call them a brief, and you're going to have your team meeting where you're running through all of the next day scenarios, the different routes or routes, as we say in Australia, that you're taking, and we have not just singular objectives. It's your primary, your secondary, alternates, because you need to have everything covered in case something goes wrong. You can quickly think on your feet, and you've got that option to take left or right, or a different way home. And you've got to have that focus every single day. You've got to wake up that day for that mission, and you can't be like, I don't want to do this today. I don't want to go to work today, like on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning. Because we didn't have that luxury. We didn't have weekends as per se. We just worked on mission tempo. With that 3 months over there, you're working, almost every day. You might get a day off per week. And it's a super high, like I said, tempo environment. And you've got to really be in a mindset of, you just got to be switched on every day. And that's a real term we use. It's just being switched on. And it's also understanding the mindset and the emotions and the mental health of all your people around you, to get the best, so you can actually get the best out of them. They get the best out of themselves, and because they're all professionals, they're all very good at what they do. They don't need to be babied or mollycoddled or micromanaged. They know what they're doing, and they're the best people on the planet at what they do. It's fantastic to be part of as a team leader, because you've got some amazing individuals around you. It's like being in a elite sports team every single day. So it's quite amazing to be part of. So that's my take on that.
As you were saying that, a couple of things came to mind. First of all, I think that your team had to be able to pivot and change. They couldn't be people that were averse to change, because at a moment, every day things could change, and you'd have to be able to react to that. But also the other thing is that being able to trust each other had to be so very important.
Yeah, you've got to have that trust, in that individuals, like I said, one their skill set, of course, knowing they've got your back, but also having that strength, that mental strength in a situation or a scenario that presents itself. And like you said, you're going to have that shifting work environment every day where you've got to pivot. It can be the weather. Maybe you may have a dust storm pop up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you have zero visibility. So you may have 20 meters visibility. You're out in your vehicles. You've got clients with you. Maybe they're a real high profile client. And you've got to really have that trust. And you do over years, because you don't have a high turnover of staff. You have the same people that are part of that environment for years and years and years. And a lot of us were in the military together, so we all knew each other's, backgrounds and what our capabilities are. And it's when you're faced in that environment where you've got so much danger, you've got a lot of roadside bombs and car bombs, and you've literally got people there every day that want to take your life. And it's a real mind bending scenario that most people just can't get their head around. It's a funny thing. I got asked a while ago, how were you guys able to mentally cope with that place for so many years? How were you able to do that every single day? And what makes you different? And the answer that I really try to think of an answer about this over the years, what made us different. And I think the best answer I can really give now is that we're just different. We're just wired differently to the average person. And there's no real explaining it. We're just wired differently.
Yeah, I would think so. So it's interesting. I think that you talked about your being always turned on. When you leave that and you go to the corporate world, you don't necessarily need to always be turned on. How do you turn yourself off? I mean, how do you?
Yeah. I totally understand what you're saying, Dan. I get asked that thing a lot as well. I think for some of us that came home from those many years away, a lot of guys and girls from Australia and the States, and that did these operations for many years. A lot of them, I think, they don't have the ability to turn off. They have this real identity crisis, as we call it, that they come back to their home. And they find it very, very tough. And this is why there's been such massive rates of suicide on the return.
Yeah.
They really come home and they're very, very lost. I was very fortunate that I had a very good support network, and I've always just been able to do it pretty well, Vicky, where I can really sort of switch on and switch off, and I'll come home and just do what I love and surround yourself with your family. And I think speaking to the right people as well. And that's how I really got to learn to do that. We've all done it, or not all of us should say, but a lot of us have done it, where we've gone out there and seek that, I suppose, wise ears. I spoke to a psychologist myself when I came home, just to sort of get my head around being back into society. And I was also going through a big divorce at the time, and I lost my father, so it was a real combination there.
Wow.
And I really had to reassess my whole life, and I've got a wonderful partner now who really supported me in that. And I think it's a really big one. You've got to have that real support element, and if you don't, I think it makes it very difficult to readjust. But I found that transition quite smooth. And you're right, you've got to have that ability where you can switch on and switch off at a moment's notice, because that's how we used to be overseas. And that's what makes the elite operators a bit different, where you may be in that super aggressive mindset one moment, but then you're dealing with children in the village the next, and kicking a football around with them. So you've got to be able to have that ability to do that.
You have to have that empathy and that understanding.
Massive word. You've got to have that empathy. I love that word, because it's true. You've got to have that real down to earth approach, I think, where you can really resonate with people from different religions, different cultures, male, female, and I think that's a real skill set. If you can pull it off, it's a great little trick in your bag of tricks.
And I think that's important to call out, because, especially, one of the things I teach is that 21st century leaders have to do it differently than before. And I think as military, a lot of times you're thought of, the tough guy, and you can't have that emotional side, that, emotional intelligence to know when to have the empathy. But I know that the more and the more folks that I talk to that are veterans, they have that, they have that ability to look at those people and understand, what they're feeling and have that empathy. But the other thing that I've seen is your attention to detail, your ability to quickly assess and react. And in our theme, every nanosecond counts in business, I think that's really ties into that nicely, because everything that goes around you, every detail is important for you to understand. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of the detail orientation of a leader?
I think for us that having that pedigree, that background, where you've hit a really good point there, that every nanosecond for us, because overseas, literally, it exactly how it was. That split second decision can be the continuation of your life or the end of your life. So when you have that surrounding you every day, it really gives you that new, I suppose, focus and attention to detail. It's something I think is very hard to get rid of, even if you want to get rid of it out of your life. If you have that for many years, and it can be little things like being on time for a meeting, where for us we're always going to be a little bit early,
15 minutes early. Yeah.
Yes, it's just how it is, and it's been a very hard thing, almost impossible for me to shake. And you've got to also be careful though, Vicky, to not overstep the mark, because people in that corporate, or business setting, government settings, they're not going to be quite the same. They're going to be like, "Oh, sorry, I'm late," and that's just fine. It's just how it is. Where when I first started working in the corporate world, it's like, okay, you're 5 minutes late. For us, that would be like, that'd be a rap over the knuckles, especially if that was with a meeting with a full bird colonel or a general, like inexcusable, and you'd be punished for that. So it's really crucial. But I think where it can come down to in business is that ability that we can really, and it's sort of part of my own process with my business, is really taking that emotion out of important decisions. And it's really looking at the positive and negative effect of every major decision. It's what we do as part of our lives. People don't realize they do it every single day. It could be the most simplest thing, like going to your local shopping center. Do you take the long way, the short way? Is it raining, or is it dark? Is it lightning? And we always weigh things up. We don't realize that we do. And I think in business, too often people make big decisions based on emotions. Yeah. And for what I do is I teach them how to collapse that, so they can really look at the actual, okay, you've got this positive decision you've made, but what are the negative connotations with your decision you just made? And I really make them look at that, and so they can really understand what's going on. And it's a really interesting process.
And also, how do you react to those negative? Now, you mentioned several times how you had to make the right decision, hopefully the first time, because it could be life-threatening. But in business, we don't have that. And in our world today, too, I'm a project lead currently for a contract, and have been a project manager for many, many years. And moving from waterfall to agile, where it's okay to screw up, because that is a lesson learned. So that has to be somewhat difficult too, I would think, to accept failure as a way to see how to do it better.
We never actually, when we made mistakes, as long as they weren't part of our bread and butter, it was fine. If they were if it was a mistake that's unforeseen, that we really just didn't see it coming, we were fine with that. And we actually almost embraced those, because you learn from those mistakes, and you're like, right, we know that's what's going to maybe happen in that scenario, and we'll try and be a bit preemptive in the future rather than reactive. And that's what I try and take into that corporate world, to have that preemptive mindset rather than waiting for it to happen, because it may be a big cyber attack. It could be a business that has a big mechanical arm. They may be producing high-end products, and for them to have a stoppage where they lose that continuity in the workplace, and it maybe cost them millions of dollars for that to stop, because they haven't thought, if that stops, how do we actually have a process that can at least keep the company going, rather than sitting back that can be sometimes weeks and weeks, especially like a big cyber attack. I think they say it's roughly 5 weeks to get your company up and going again. Wow. Or if they have, some sort of process there, whether it's third party or whatever it is, that at least they can keep a certain portion of the business going and keep it monetized. So it's very, very interesting.
So that really leads well into the next question. in your bio, you talked about the adaptability to extreme situations in a crisis and armed conflict. How does one manage our stress levels in these situations that you just described, where whether it be COVID shutting you down, or, you know, your clients in, maybe you're okay in the country you're in, but the country that you work with or deal with, like China, has their situation cut down, so no supply chains impacted everything. It adds a little stress to running a company or a project. So how do you manage those different levels of stress, and how can that those techniques be applied to our entrepreneurs today?
We used to have a saying, it's a real common saying in the military, especially in like the specialized units, is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You know, that ability, and for us it's the ability to really slow time down in a crisis. It can be a vehicle accident, it can be anything, someone's got a big injury, and generally the faster we go under panic, the bigger mistakes we make. That's just a no-brainer. And I used to teach it a bit with, I used to teach a fair bit of like active shooter, armed defender talks, which is so, you know, so I suppose relevant today, especially with what's going on even in the States with schools and things where, and I used to teach people that if you panic and you run and you follow the masses, there's a big chance you're going to lose your life. You take a second to sit back and really take it in what's going on in that crisis. It may really give you that chance of survival, and it's just giving yourself that chance, and it can be applied in every single lesson. That when a crisis happens, you sit back and you've got to really, I suppose, just take in what's, like I said, what's happening around you. Take a moment to have a bit of a think about it, and make a decision, because even that 10 seconds in any big decision can really be a difference. Yeah. And I really teach that in that corporate setting of, you know, if you react to it too quickly, you are guaranteed you are going to make a mistake. And I know that you're not losing your life over it, but it may cost the business, you know, millions of dollars. And that can then cause a lot of it can cause internal divide within the workforce. There's so many different sort of reactions come out of that action. And it's a skill it takes, I think, quite a while to learn, because some people don't have that natural ability to do that. Right. Like I said, you may come across a really major vehicle accident, and the average person panics. They're not used to seeing, you know, injuries or death, and they just really freak out. But for us, we just really, in some ways, we actually come into our element.
Yeah, right.
You know, and we don't just rush in. We learnt overseas that you rush into anything, you may get blown up. This is what they would do. They would understand that people rush into a vehicle accident, and they would actually choreograph it. So it looked maybe a small little bomb, a couple of injured people, and they knew what people would rush in, all the first responders and the you know, paramedics and, you know, whoever's there, police. Then they would set the big car bomb off, the secondary, and blow everybody up. And it can be a similar thing in that corporate setting where you've got to really think, is this the best course of action for this, you know, scenario? But it takes time to learn. Like I said, some people are born with it, and some people really, you know, over time can become much better at it. But it's only through you know, trial and error that you really learn that.
So the last question I have before we do rapid fire is, what advice would you have given your 20 or 30-year-old self?
What advice? I think one thing I suppose if I try and flip around, I'm proud of, but I've always chased my dreams. If I've had a bit of a dream, I've always chased after it. The biggest bit of advice I would have given myself, though, is to really embrace my family more, I suppose. You know, like when I lost my father, was you can't get those years back. And, you know, I was so, I suppose, dedicated to that cause that I was on, that you think they're going to be there forever. And that's the advice I'd give myself: really take a bit more time with your family, because once they're gone, they're not coming back. And that's the big one.
For sure. Okay, time for rapid fire. This is where I give you, for you, it's actually some questions, and not spend a lot of time with no wrong answers, but this kind of, you have such a great bio. I wanted to take some of those pieces of it and put them in this rapid fire. So the first is crisis awareness. What exactly does that mean to you?
It's really simple explanation. It's making people, especially in what I do now, corporate setting, just really aware of their environment, really understanding what their own role is, what their own capabilities are, and what the capabilities of their people are around them, and understanding that in most settings that something is going to be coming at you one day. It's not a thing of if it will happen, it's going to happen, and making them actually comfortable with that mindset. Being actually comfortable with that is not a bad thing.
The next one is an area that, as I've been in business over 40 years, cultural change has always been a part of it. But I think we had our borders that, especially in the States, for example, it was easy to know that it was there, know that you should do it, but it didn't always impact you, and you didn't need to be as aware. But the last 2 years has really forced us to get a better handle on this. What advice would you give our audience today about how to deal with and understand cultural change?
I think the advice is you've got to really, especially in the current age, like you said, when we're so connected around the world now with the capabilities of platforms like what we're on right now, and it's only going to keep progressing. It's not going to go away, and that can be, and culture can be such a big thing. Culture can be a culture of someone's country, the culture they grew up in, that culture, but also the culture inside of a business. How you go about that workplace every day as a leader, how you treat your people. Do you get to know them? Do you go out there and actually walk the floor and have a coffee with them and really inspire your people? And the people, it's so simple, because everyone loves a great leader. And I think the bad leaders, they don't realize what they're missing out on, that they have this sea of people behind them that love them and will do anything for them.
Yeah.
And I think we've just got to be adaptable, because there's going to be change now, like you said, after COVID, and the way that you're getting a big shift from the old days of business with that big male-orientated, masculine boardroom, now with a lot more, females coming in and younger people coming in. You're seeing younger people on boards now that never happened in the past. You'd never have a 35-year-old sitting on a board. And, I think we just had in Australia one of the youngest ever females. I think she was in her 30s on a major board in Australia. And it's going to happen. And I think it's a great thing. And we can't just have this mindset of one shoe. It's got to be both. It's got to be both feet in that environment to be the best version of ourselves. And so we have to be, like you said, adaptable. We've got to be understanding that there's going to be that change, whether it's working from home or a couple of days in the office. It's all that whole sphere that's going to be different moving forward. That's
for sure.
And we have to be that way. Otherwise, we're going to get left behind.
Yeah, and there are 5 generations, so it's not a one shoe fits all. Yeah, and we as leaders have to understand that. I remember whenever I was younger getting into business, and I hated when I would come up with new ideas and they said, oh, but that would set precedents. We couldn't do that. And now it's like, I'm so embracing the fact that I have all these different generations, and I need to get to know what motivates and what excites them and what will have them be their best, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to take that last question even a little bit further about your thoughts on why we need to be resilient and adaptable.
Well, I think the last, I suppose it's almost 3 years now, isn't it? That's really, and I think that word resilience has become a real, I suppose, almost a popular word in the last few years that people never used years ago, really, was resilience. And now we're really having to understand what resilience is. I mean, we dealt with it for years because we had to have that bit of, that ability to react under difficult circumstances and situations, whether it was, facing the people that wanted to take our lives or the weather or, working extreme heat. And that was that resilience shown. And it's exactly the same in that corporate setting. And like I said, with COVID, it's really, people had to draw on so many emotions and strengths they probably never knew they had. And I think too many humans underestimate themselves, what they can achieve. And I love that. I love helping people to achieve what they thought unachievable. I love flipping that mindset, flipping their paradigm and saying, so you actually can do this. Like don't be so discouraged, and don't doubt yourself, because we're only here for one go at this life that we're in, this form we're in now. We're not coming back. So what's the worst that can happen? And I think having that resilience build up, it's really going to be such a benefit for us moving forward. And you never know what's around the corner. We don't know what's next. Who would ever think we would be in a pandemic that would shut the world down for 3 years in this modern age? We're all, I suppose, so naive to that. And we think that crisis is going to be, something like an act of terrorism, or, whether it's tornadoes or floods or things like this. And it was something so out of the box that none of us saw coming. But it's really made people dig into what they now understand what resilience is.
So how do we get out of our professional ruts?
Yeah, look, I love this one. And to me, it's a real masculine versus feminine approach and I think you say the average person, masculine and feminine, they're like, oh, you mean man versus woman? It's like, no. It's that masculine business attitude of working 70, 80 hours a week. And it's going to be so detrimental to your health and your actual ability to really think on your feet. That's the whole thing with us. We needed to be able, overseas, we needed to be able to keep thinking forward under those extreme situations, but also be effective in what we did. Not just functioning. You've got to be really able to be good at what you do. And it's so important, moving forward. With that feminine approach, it's more lateral, left to right. We all know that, women are better at juggling multiple tasks than what men are. Men are more directional down the center. And that's the way we've got to be, where we've got a bit more time with our families and really putting things into perspective and enjoying life a little bit more. We can't just be so focused on that business attitude that it can end up killing you, really. And there's no one works well under exhaustion. And you get then all of a sudden this toxic flow down that flows down through the whole company from the top, where that pressure from above to be exactly the same as the CEO or the board. And it's just this like never-ending dog chasing its tail that just never fixes itself. So that's my attitude towards that. It's quite a big one with me, actually.
I so agree. I had to wait till I was 50 to decide that I didn't care any longer what the other folks needed. And that's when the last 10 years of my career just soared, because I led the way that was from my heart,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good one, Vicky. And I think it's such a shame, because we had so many great, leaders in the past that really weren't given that option to really lead. It might be there in a token. And I worked under an amazing female lady ambassador I looked after overseas at the embassy, and taught me a lot about myself. She did, and a lot about professionalism and we need more like yourself and like her.
Yeah, for sure. So how is lacking confidence really just needing some direction? And what is one tip that you could use to identify this in our business or our lives?
I think the biggest thing that I promote, especially when I'm doing maybe a course, and I always look for there's always a quieter souls on a course. There's always going to have your couple of alphas, then you're going to have your middle group of people that are all the ones that laugh and joke around and they'll get along. Then you're going to have always a couple of quiet people that won't speak up, that you ask questions and they're always going to be a little bit, on the quiet side. But my trick is I'll always catch them if we go for a coffee, because in most corporate settings have their big coffee room, and I'll always catch them and say, how's it all going? How's the course going? How are you enjoying yourself? And tell me a bit about yourself, not just here, but at home and in the workplace as well. And really understanding who they are. And I suppose the tip I give them is you're no different to that other person. You've got to just back yourself and believe in yourself. I know it can be hard, because we're not all the same, but you've really just got to, help them believe that. And I do it quite a bit. I've done a little bit of that sort of mentoring style environment when I was at university, like that. A lot of the younger, I call them kids, that I was there with when I was doing my masters, and a couple of them were quite nervous about their futures and just that direction. And I really sort of saw it as an opportunity to really turn their whole mindsets around, which was a great experience. And it's great to see them doing well now in life. And it can take the smallest adjustment, 5% adjustment, to be, really, I suppose, just to become the best version of yourself and give yourself that opportunity and that chance. So yeah, but I really enjoy that.
That's what I love about this platform is, no longer is that person that is not contributing in an audio conference call. You didn't know as the facilitator that someone was trying to get the attention. There were, the person that had the floor sometimes didn't release it too much. And so now in this environment, you can see the look of a person's eyes or their body movement that they have something to say. And maybe you do need to call it out to get them to say it, but it's a great way to have that person grow in confidence by just having someone listen to them.
That's the key word, listen. Is absolutely, Vicky, is just be a bit of a listener. And if I go and work one-on-one with somebody, I mean, for me, I don't care if you're the janitor or if you're earning $5 million a year as the CEO. To me, I've worked with the highest level of an operational sphere. I've worked with 2-3-star generals and governor generals and PMs and prime ministers and presidents and things. So for me, we're all come from somewhere. We all start at the bottom.
Yeah.
And so anyone who's successful has been at the bottom, and I remind people of that. And I really go on there and just say to them, if they're in a bit of a bad spot in their personal life, because we all have insecurities. We all do.
Yeah,
I've seen
sure.
it at the very top. They can be the worst. And I just say to them, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your life.
Yeah.
Tell me who you are. I want to know who you are, not here, but your life, and that's the big key. Just listen, and you can really understand who people are.
Yeah. People just need to do that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. It is time now for you, if you're just listening, to grab your paper and pencil so that we can get some contact information. So if you're listening, you can get, I guess the best way to get to Mark is going to his website, markashbyconsulting.com. That's markashbyconsulting.com. We do have his email, mark@markashbyconsulting.com, and he's on LinkedIn at Mark Ashby Consulting. Again, just I would suggest that if you have any further questions, to check out his website, see if you can get answers there, or go ahead and email him with any of the questions that you have. Well, it has been just such a pleasure talking with you. This is a topic that I think is so important for our leaders today, both corporate and entrepreneurs, to really assess how they lead. And I think that the skills that you bring are just so helpful and vital to helping us become stronger and better leaders. So I want to encourage everyone to go to the website. He has shared great tips today and tools. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. Looking forward to doing future podcasts with you to see how you're doing. I'm thinking you need to write a book.
Yeah, I've been hit up a bit about that. So yeah, I've had a few sort of suggestions there, and I think I probably will.
Yeah.
I was talking with a really good countryman of yours a while ago. I love a bloke named John Knotts. He was talking to me about it. He's also ex-Air Force, and he's very successful in business over there in the States. And he said, right, you need to get busy, get writing. So I'll probably do that. Yeah. I've got a lot to share.
Think about, even if you don't do the whole book yourself, you have so many probably success stories that you could just, reach out to each of them and get a chapter on each of them to have a compilation book that I'm sure would be interesting. And having those personal stories, I think, helps booster the confidence of everyone who reads it. Yeah,
and that's the whole point. I mean, to do a book, I suppose, Vicky, you want it to be something that people get something out of it. You don't want to do a book and just like, I've done a book, and for me, it's a big deal. And I've had a lot of colleagues do books, and some great ones and some not so great. So for us, we're in that peer sort of setting that I'm in. We're all the worst critics. So you want to make sure it's worthwhile. I'd probably try and do like a bit of a half my background and sort of half what all my tips are, for leadership now. So yeah, Awesome. It's something I'll probably end up doing.
All right. Well, you do it. I'll get you back on here for sure. All right. So thank you so much. And as always, I remind everybody that it's until next time, remember, life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Nedling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nedling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.